like I mentioned to you, I had the privilege of meeting your dad back in or granddad in the early '90s, and right after that, I think is when he started the Josh Gibson Foundation. Right? What year was that? '94.
Started the foundation in '96, something like that.
'96. Okay, and then you took over running it not too long after that, right?
Right. That's long after that. Yeah, I got involved in it. Matter of fact, I'm sorry, I got involved in it in '96. He started in '94,
Okay, all right.
so I got involved 2 years later. Yep.
And what when he set that up, it was more than just the thoughts of keeping, the legacy of Josh Gibson going. What was the intentions? What was the foundations in the beginning? Where was it headed, and where is it today?
Well, my grandfather Junior, when he came, when he thought about the foundation, the main thing he wanted was to keep his father's legacy alive, as well as the other great Negro League baseball players,
Hmm.
especially here in the Pittsburgh area. He always considered the Grays and the Crawford the two greatest teams in the Negro Leagues. And so he felt as though we had a lot of history right here in Pittsburgh. And then, of course, you got Josh Gibson and some of the other great players who played here. Why not start a foundation? But the main goal back then is mainly just educating a lot of people about the Negro Leagues. I mean, still today, a lot of people don't know about the Negro Leagues, but
Hmm.
even back then, almost 30 years later, people still did. They really didn't know about the Negro Leagues back then.
Hmm.
And so we started off with a small educational program and a baseball program. And we started off just mainly just giving the kids history about each team they were on. All the teams were named after the Negro League baseball teams.
Awesome.
And then we had all the awards named after the players. So it kind of started that way. And then once we start involving more kids in our program, that's when we started adding the educational components. We started off with after school program. And now we have grown from that period of time until now to over 300 kids. We have 3 sites. We have several programs from a curriculum in the schools called BOSA. And our BOSA program, I'm real proud of this program because it's called Business and Sports Academy, and it teaches kids the business side of sports. And one of our board members came up with this idea is that there are so many opportunities for kids behind the scenes that they have no clue about because most kids want to, of course, become a professional athlete, and we always know that percentage is very small. But why not still be involved in the game of sports behind the scenes? So our courses go from sports marketing, sports media, sports law, sports sales, sports events. We're about to add in sports training, and so we're really
Awesome.
excited about that program. It has been excited about it. It's a college credit course as well. And so, but
Very
due to
cool.
the pandemic, as you mentioned, all of our sites were closed last year. We are a small nonprofit, so we're doing a lot of fundraising to try to catch up. And so we're excited about this year, and hopefully, it seems like we'll be able to have our fundraisers this year to recoup some of the funds that we lost last year. So, but the foundation has definitely grown, and all credit goes to my grandfather, Josh Gibson Jr. He was a visionary, and he was the one who got everything started, and I just took over the torch and trying to raise the torch as high as I can.
There's a great point, right? You talk about the word visionary, right? You mentioned it already. Rube Foster was a visionary. J.L. Wilkinson with the Monarchs was a pioneer and a visionary. I mean, look at the things that the Negro Leagues were doing long before Major League Baseball was. The first night games with lights and promotional nights like women's nights and so forth. Pittsburgh's Negro Leagues, Gus Greenlee, wasn't that the first uh, ballpark that was built exclusively for a Negro League team in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Gus Greenlee built his own stadium right here in the city of Pittsburgh area called the Hill District. At the time, I think it held 7,500 people, and when he built it, I think it was about $100,000 at the time. But
Wow,
yeah,
that's a lot of
and
money for
Gus
back then.
back then, right?
Yeah.
But Gus the same way. I mean, he definitely knew how to make a profit because his story is he owned the Crawford Grill, the famous Crawford Grill, but he also ran numbers. He was a numbers
Yeah.
guy, as we call the data lottery. And so, but one thing about Gus, though, he was very generous. He helped out a lot of people in the community. He made sure that people were well taken care of if they needed any help or anything. So, but he definitely was another guy who had a vision, and he felt like, why should I keep renting Forest Field and paying
Right.
all this money to rent Forest Field when I could just build my own stadium and I can get everything, I get all the money. So he was smart.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in a lot of these things, it really comes down to the money aspect, right? I mean, all the innovations, and that's why I think these guys were so brilliant. I mean, like you had mentioned them, they it, one of the misconceptions about I think the Negro Leagues and I think even the press back in the early days was nudging them, trying to get them to go this way, was the wanting to have that same standard of 154 game schedule at the time for the Negro Leagues and compare it to the major leagues and so forth. And it wasn't that type of game because, like you just said, I mean, there were people who owned these stadiums. They didn't have their own stadiums until
Right.
he built one. So everybody wanted their cut, right? You had the promoters and the booking agents and the stadium owners and the team owners and the players needed their cut, and so everybody had to do what they had to do in order to make this work. And barnstorming was a big part of that. And even though they only played, I want to say 1920, most teams played 60, 70 games. They barnstormed. I mean, it was a year-round thing.
Yeah.
And it really, like I said, the thing I think that a lot of people underestimate the impact of that, taking that brand and baseball to every corner of the continent, every small town you could think of. I just think it was monumental in the way baseball grew and how it helped build that major league brand, even though it was the Negro Leagues. I mean, I don't think they would admit that. But how much barnstorming did Josh Gibson do? He did quite a bit as well, right?
Yeah, he did quite a bit. And just want to touch on something you mentioned. As you mentioned, these guys play baseball all year round. And my grandfather used to call it, they never dropped the ball
Mm-hmm.
because, as we all know, besides the barnstorming and exhibitions games here in the United States, they also played in the Latin countries. Josh
Yes.
played in Cuba, he played in Venezuela, he played in Puerto Rico, he played in Mexico. So besides the barnstorming and exhibition games here in the States, they played all year round. So these guys, definitely had a full-time job and a full-time career, but that's how it was back then for them. So no, maybe they didn't play 154 games in the Negro Leagues, but by the time they got done playing
Yeah.
that year, they played 154 games, so or more.
Way more probably, right? Yeah.
Right, you're right.
Boy, what you said before is so true. I mean, it's unfortunate what has been lost. I mean, the boy, uh, over just complete nonsense. I mean, I just it just is frustrating to me. And so when you're talking about him going to Mexico and other countries in Latin America, they enjoyed it more there at the time, and no, pretty simple reason why. They could go there and be treated with the respect that they deserved, and not have to deal with coming back here and dealing with a lot of nonsense in a lot of places. So it's unfortunate.
We have an article where Josh was overseas and he didn't want to come back,
Yeah.
and Cumberland Posey threatened to put a lawsuit against him if he didn't come back. So he ended up coming back. But you're right, those guys. And again, you got to realize they're all the same skin color,
Hmm.
and they have to deal with the racism, the things that we're doing here in the states. So yeah, if it was up to, I'm pretty sure not just Josh but other players, they would have stayed over there in Latin countries and finished their careers over there.
Every day on Twitter, I try to send out just some little piece, and a lot of times I'll pick, some a state, an area, a town, to what that connection is to the Negro Leagues, and some of the digging I do on like newspapers.com and places like that, right? Trying to find something that isn't just out there copying something off the internet, right? And one of the things I came across, which was really interesting to me, was there was an article in the newspaper in the I think it was right around 1936, 38. So Josh would have been probably in his prime then, right?
Yeah.
But they talked about the all of the players of the Negro Leagues that were going to the Dominican Republic and Mexico, and how this was now a crisis. And I sent that out, and Bob commented, "Boy, that's ironic because here they wouldn't let these guys play in the major leagues, but now they're concerned because they're going to Mexico. I mean, come on." Where,
Right.
where's the? There's a little bit of irony there that now they're concerned because what it's impacting um, their cut of the Negro League gate, I guess.
Yeah.
When they, you know, so that was a big reason why the Grays moved to Washington as well, right?
They didn't actually move. They just played half their
Oh, okay,
games.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
they just played half their games in D.C. It was more of a gentleman's agreement between the mayor of D.C. and the owner, Cameron Posey. Um, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people always ask me, why is there a Josh Gibson statue at the Nationals ballpark? And I explained to him, well, during that time when he played for the Homestead Grays also played half their season at Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. And just most recently, when the Nats won the World Series, they were saying this is the first World Series they won in like so many years. And somebody's like, no, the Grays won it in 1943. And so it's been a lot of history in D.C. with the Washington Grays. Like I said, Josh's been fortunate. He played for two great teams.
Mm-hmm.
Some players will play in Pittsburgh and maybe Detroit or Chicago. I mean, he didn't have to leave. He played right here in both cities. I mean, one
Yeah.
city, two teams. And two great teams
Mm-hmm.
and two good teams. So, you look at that history. But yeah, the Grays had a great run. And, part of that had to include DC. And so we're excited to be a part of the DC family. Like I said, Josh's statue is there. Um, the old site of Griffith Stadium sits on the new site is Howard University Hospital. They have a
Huh.
marker out there that talks about the Griffith Stadium and the players who played there. And so there's a tremendous respect for DC and definitely for Josh Gibson as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, these are the kinds of stories that people need to hear because, like you said, if you got asked that, how many other people just do not know the true story? Because there's so much myth out there too, right? I mean, in a way, that's unfortunate because you know. These were baseball players, and some were greats of the game, like your great grandfather, and others were just average ball players. They were ball players, and they were making a living, and that's how